You're listening to a special presentation from Night of the Living podcast, Zoned Out with Freddy and Joe. Oh boy, Joe.
Oh boy. Hi, Freddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm still kind of laughing a little bit, not necessarily laughing, but about that line in this week's episode of the Twilight Zone, that what I'm going to give you can't be pinned on a uniform.
There's some pretty good ones of this episode. He's this Corey guy. We'll get to it, but man, he's a piece of work.
Yeah. It's got some great dialogue this week. But how are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well. I'm doing an adjustment to my diet of living without sugar.
Oh yeah.
And I got to tell you, there's lots of really good sugar substitutes. And after probably, it's been about a month now. And after the first week, it gets easier, a little harder and then easier. But I feel so different. Like, I feel like a normal human being without all the mood swings and stuff.
Oh,
so
wow. That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Meanwhile, I had donuts for breakfast. So
breakfast of champions.
That's
it's
right.
All right. No shame.
A little chocolate donuts.
No judgment.
I'm one of those people. I think sugar might be poison, but I still love it. But like I do see it as like, I'm like, it has no nutritional value at all. So like, if nothing else, it's just taking up space for no good reason. But I do love that sugar high.
It's hard. It's hard. It's like the fact that it's in everything, everywhere, always.
Yeah, all at once.
I'm turning into rocks and hot dog fingers and all of that.
That's not normal, but it's a Twilight Zone podcast. So what are you gonna do?
Right. It's all part of it.
Yeah. So we're talking about I Shot an Arrow into the Air, original air date, January 15th, 1960. Got a cast of 8, including Sterling, so another small cast episode. This will be the first of 3 episodes directed by Stuart Rosenberg. The other 2 are He's Alive and Mute. Rosenberg, he's best known for, he directed, now this is the thing that I think is really cool. He directed Cool Hand Luke.
Oh, nice.
Which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's just a great movie, a prison movie with a great
Paul
cast.
Newman.
Yeah, Paul Newman. And just great characters. Like, it's one of those, prison movies are usually pretty good. It's like, but this is like one of the best prison movies of all time.
Which is a weird accolade to shower on something. It's the best prison movie you'll ever see.
It goes up there with Shawshank. For me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cool Hand Luke does.
I've never seen Cool Hand Luke, but I'm excited. I hear so much about it. So many of these classic movies where I'm just like, I need to sit down and just watch a whole bunch of classics to catch up.
When
kind of like Twilight Zone.
I was in college, I think. Me and my buddy Matt shared a copy of Cool Hand Luke that we bought together.
Oh, that's awesome. Love that.
Yeah. That's how broke we were. But this director, Rosenberg, also did Question 7 and the original The Amityville Horror. So he's got some horror credit in there too.
That's the original it's got some really cool, it always stands out to me as one of those good examples of what you can do without a bunch of crazy special effects. I mean, you can do some cool special effects stuff too, but like just some of the moments in that original movie are fantastic.
Yeah, it's a pretty good movie considering what it's based on, especially.
Right.
I thought this was super interesting. The writing credit goes to Madeline Champion, who, and the reason she got this credit is she had approached Rod Serling at a party and she said, what would happen if 3 guys landed on what they thought was an asteroid and it turned out to be outside of Las Vegas?
Oh, so there's the spoiler.
There's that spoiler. But Serling was so taken with the proposal, he paid her $500 on the spot and gave her on-screen credit for having suggested the story idea. It's the only time this ever happened for the series. Really cool story.
Pretty impressive to have somebody that, somebody like Serling that thrown by what you said. Pretty cool idea. I don't know.
If you knew Rod Serling, or if like I would be constantly, because I'm one of those people, like I'm like, I have a premise, but I don't know what to do with it. Here's the premise, and I'll give it. I always want to be like, here you go.
Yeah.
Take this premise, please do something with it. But like I always had this one where it was about a guy who picks up a spider on a date at a bar, and then the spider dies in the night, and he has to call his buddies to help hide the body of the little spider, you know, and it's like one of those things.
Like absurdist drama or something.
Just absurdist. That's the sort of shit, if Rod Serling were a friend of mine, he'd have to put up with a lot of those ideas.
Yeah. Freddy, not the spider. You know what? Not every story can have a spider. And wait, how can I do it in Rod Serling? Not every story is going to have a spider, Freddy. I don't know.
A spider that's also a sex worker. So yeah, there's no original music in this episode. It has the stock music that they've used before from The Usual Suspects.
Not the movie, mind you.
We get into the cast. We got Dewey Martin as Corey. This guy worked with Howard Hawks a lot. He was in The Thing from Another World, Land of the Pharaohs, The Big Sky, and other stuff. But I love The Thing from Another World.
He's got that like 50s, 60s face.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, hey, and that hair, and yeah, he's
not a good guy.
Of his time. Oh, and this one, man, he is a whiny, weird, complainy. Well, we'll get into it. I have some comments during the episode of moments where I'm like, this guy reminds me of somebody.
Oh yeah. So Dewey Martin in real life piloted an F-6F Hellcat in the Pacific.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's one of those with the big face painted on it, right?
Some of them have like, crazy decals all over them. I think some of them are also like you would pick up those like pinups characters they would put on. But he was shot down in 1945, and he was a prisoner of war until the Japan surrendered.
Oh my gosh!
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Edward Benz, who plays Colonel Bob Donlin, and I in my mind I kept wanting to say Bob Bonlin. I don't know why I said
Bonlin. No. Bob Donlin, Bob Don blah blah Donlin.
Yeah, Bob blah blah. He was in 12 Angry Men, Patton, North by Northwest, a bunch of great credits, TV and film. This is the first of 2 episodes he'll be in. He's going to come back in season 5 there at the end of the run for The Long Morrow. Ted Otis Sr. as Pearson. I have nothing on that guy, really. I took no notes on him. Not that he's not an interesting person or anything. He just wasn't a standout.
He had kind of an interesting accent in the show, and I couldn't quite place it. I was like almost Canadian, but not sure.
Oh yeah. Harry Bartle as Langford. This guy, he was a regular on Gunsmoke and Dragnet, in a show I never heard of called Let George Do It. But he was the announcer on Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce's run of The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes as the voice of that radio program, and also Dear Abby. He was the voice of Dear Abby on the radio.
Oh wow.
Which is weird that they didn't have a woman do that. A little bit to me, It seems odd. Maybe he was just the announcer of that show,
or it was a sign of the times.
Yeah. So that's all the backstory on it. So I would say take it away, Joe.
Cool. Well, so it's kind of interesting. This one starts out and they're in a command center, like a launch center. You can tell right away it's like, Kennedy or some similar type of space launching location. And in the beginning, Serling gives the voiceover, and he's talking about her name is Arrow 1. She represents 4.5 years of planning, preparation, and training, and 1,000 years of science, mathematics, and the projected dreams and hopes of not only a nation, but a world. That is a long run-on sentence, Mr. Serling. She is the first manned aircraft into space, and this is the countdown. The last 5 seconds before man shot an arrow into the air. And So you get the idea. This is, a big launch. So the launch takes place. They're using some stock footage, which is kind of cool to see some of that.
Yeah.
And right after, they're like, the launch is successful, but they have like this big glass thing. They're drawing diagrams of the trajectory, and there's a big X where it's like, it's gone now.
Did you know
And
that control room stuff was reused from Forbidden Planet?
oh, no, Forbidden Planet. That's wild. I was going to say the glass wall thing looks just like Star Wars, like
Yeah.
A New Hope when they have the 4 seconds to launch Oblivion. Anyway, so basically 2 guys come out and do the exposition of, well, it was fine, and then we had a short period of a solar flare, and we've lost contact. They think it was solar. So there was a short period of interference, and they think it's solar. They're not sure. And of course, my favorite part of this is they're like, could they have gone off course? And the guy's like, the course was preset. It's Colonel Bob Donlin commanding. Like,
are you nuts,
you
Bob Donlin?
Right,
Maybe that would happen
like,
with Bob Bonlin.
But Bob Donlin, never. So basically, they've lost contact. They're not sure where it went. There's this big arrow that goes away from the Earth, and the one guy in a very Oppenheimer moment walks off and looks out the window and is like, I shot an arrow into the sky, or whatever the line is.
The air.
And, yeah, into the air. And where it landed, I know not where.
It should be the sky. I've always felt like that should be the sky because it just feels more poetic.
Yeah, yeah. And where it lands, I know not why or where it.
Oh, it's so it can rhyme. It's I shot an arrow into the air. Where it landed, I know not where.
Because it's weird language anyway, right?
Yeah, you say I shot an arrow into the sky. Where it landed, Ay.
Oh, wait, what? How about I shot an arrow into the sky. I know not where it happens to lie.
Oh, that's good. Mm-hmm. You know what? Maybe they were ultimately right to go with air.
It works.
It's as a poem. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm gonna go ahead and take back what I said before. that
you know what? The famed poet is fine, I guess. They know what they're doing. Yeah.
I think lawn darts come to mind for me whenever I hear this poem too.
Yes,
you too.
Which always involves dying because those things were deadly.
Because when you're a kid, you would take them and throw them straight up in the air as hard as you could.
Oh yeah, which is and then you would come back down and maybe pierce you.
Yeah, because you threw it straight up above your head. If you don't know what a lawn dart is, it's just a huge, heavy metal dart that is meant to go straight into the ground. They were banned for good reason, but like we would throw them straight up in the air, and then you'd have to you'd run somewhere. You're like, oh, you don't know where it's going to land.
Right.
So you would be like, oh, if it comes straight back down, I could be piercing my brain right now.
Right. And it's kind of dangerous, but they didn't need to ban them necessarily. I mean, yes, it's a medieval weapon that they would have used to, kill other people, but it was kind of like used like horseshoes. You put a hoop out and then you try and get the lawn dart. And anyway,
I miss horseshoes and lawn darts.
Yeah. You can still find them some places.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but you'd have to 3D print it or something.
Sorry about that digression.
That's what we're known for here, right? So let's get back into the zone, the Twilight Zone.
With Colonel Knobgoblin and his crew.
And I wondered if this was the first psych out with the Twilight Zone. Kind of like they push you to think that something happened like that. Like they're clearly giving all these kind of indications that it happened this way when it clearly didn't. And I don't know if that's the case or not. And I know there's always a twist,
Yeah.
But something about this one felt like they were doing lots of little pieces to kind of misdirect you to think.
Well, it's I feel like they have to, and again, we established in the beginning, the concept of the episode is they spend the episode stranded in this desert. They presume they've landed on an asteroid, but I think they have to do that. Just what you're talking about, like in the first act. You have to come up with a lot of reasons why these expert astronauts would not believe that the most reasonable thing is that they somehow crash landed back on Earth again, which to
Right.
me, I watched it again this morning, and they, Amy was in the room, and I was like, okay, so neither one of us were picking up on any specific thing that would rule out, that being something they considered.
Right. Right.
So I feel like they have to do that in this one just to front load it with they're definitely, as far as you know, on an asteroid as
Right.
well.
And I think they pushed it a little bit just because, you have to suspend the disbelief somehow, and I think it does a pretty good job of that. Especially for a television episode, for the most of the people watching, you're trusting, you're following along, and you're like, oh yeah, well, and
we knew so
the
little back then too, as your everyday person knew there was a space program, but they didn't really know any of the details of what the reality of it was either. So I think at the time this aired, it was probably an easier sell to be like, that it could be possible that these astronauts who were training for God knows how many years for a mission, that they would be like, okay, we landed on an asteroid, and that's the first thing they think happened,
Right. I love the idea that they're showing this, and immediately right after that moment where he steps, the scientist steps to the window and says the poem thing, some guy's like, oh wait a minute, they probably just landed in Reno,
That would have been great.
Oh yeah, let's go get them, that sort of.
At the end of the
like
episode, they could show one of those air traffic control guys like paying the other one for a lost bet of where the rocket was.
That's perfect.
I bet they never broke the atmosphere. That's the other thing questions I had about this one was like, okay, the rocket takes off.
Yeah.
And did they break the atmosphere and reach the orbit of the Earth at all? Or because I mean, and again, years later, Serling, when he writes Planet of the Apes, there's some of this stuff he's playing with some of these ideas again, where this idea of like, well, crash landing on Earth and thinking it's somewhere else, but also like it doesn't make a lot of sense, like scientifically. Right.
Right.
You start questioning it.
You're probably relying on the audience's lack of familiarity with how space travel works and all that, I mean, even now, I imagine there's people out there who are like, I don't know, you go up for a long time and then you're in space?
Yeah, because he's talking about seeing the sun looks the same size. And it's right. Position-wise, so they think they're sharing Earth's orbit.
Yeah, well, it's funny. And because people didn't know, again, to your point, they thought they were on an asteroid that shared the orbit with Earth. And they were kind of talking about how the sun is the same distance. The air is okay to breathe. So somehow we're fine. And that's kind of a miracle. We're really lucky. And actually, there's a line about it. I'll jump into that in just a second. So there's turns out there's technically four crew members who have survived this crash, and they said there was an explosion in the electrical system, and that's all. And then the electricity went out, and that's all they remember. So it's Colonel Donlin, Corey, and Pearson. We don't get a rank on Corey or Pearson. And then there's another guy that's unnamed in the episode who I found out was Hudak. Anyway, from the thank you IMDb, that is gravely injured, and Corey is freaking out. He's the guy who was the pilot in real life of the Hellcat. So maybe he has experience of this, but he's just like right off the bat, like twitchy, and the colonel is writing down notes like a captain's log or something like that. Like, here's what's going on, here's what we see, here's what we know. And Corey comes over and snatches out of his hand and is like, hey, what are you doing? Focus on, right now. Yeah. Get us home. So I think there's a lot of that misdirection where he's trying to push people to get the urgency of the moment. And then they complain that they're giving water to this guy who's really gravely injured. And so the colonel's like, hey, go ahead and give him water. And Corey's like, Colonel, this man is going to die. And Donlin goes, I love this line. If he dies, he dies, but nobody gets behind a push.
Yeah.
If he's thirsty, we give him water. If he's hot, we move him to the shade. Then if he goes, we give him a little prayer too. Just like, if he dies, he dies.
It's
All
some
right.
good,
Well,
it's some good tough guy dialogue.
right. So they start digging graves, and then Pearson, the other guy who's not Corey, and starts talking to the Colonel Conlon, and he says, "Colonel, that's odd. The size of the sun, I mean." And he goes, Colonel Conlon says, "Yes, I noticed. It's hardly any different than what we knew on Earth." And Pearson goes, "Which means that whatever asteroid we've landed on is in the same orbit as Earth."
It's that Gordian. He skipped the Gordian knot argument. You know, he's like, instead of being like, "Oh, we're on Earth," he's like, you know, the most obvious solution. No,
Right.
we're going to an asteroid.
Somehow we just skipped that. And it goes on to, like, he talks about how there isn't any radiation to speak of and the air is perfect. And it's like, oh.
They even have a Tim Hortons over the ridge there.
This must be the asteroid Tim Hortons. So they're talking a little bit about it, but he basically says it took him 4.5 years. They said in the voiceover as well. It took him 4.5 years to make that ship. There was no prototype. It was just one of a kind. And so if they're going to try and find him, they're going to have to build another one. So they're basically on their own.
Great stock footage of the ship taking off in the beginning with the little rockets on the side that, you know, keep the ship plumb.
Yeah.
Is something you don't see that, and I don't think they use those anymore. But for any kind of launches, but it's cool to see.
Which is interesting. I recently saw some other rocket launches, and some of the launches they talk about with where they're landing vertically, you know, because they can.
Yeah.
And they do use those side guidance rockets on those.
On
if
those,
you ever
they
see
do.
it'll come down, it'll fire to an angle or another angle, and it keeps it plumb.
That's
like that.
really cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how that technology works. That's a whole field that's very fascinating.
I watch
how they do all that.
I don't know a lot about the real science of it, but I watched For All Mankind. I haven't started the latest season yet, but I love space travel stuff.
That's very cool. Is that like a drama, or is that real, or is it a documentary?
It's an alternate history. So it's what if the Russians beat us to the moon landing and how it affected the space program going forward from there.
Oh, wow.
And the changes to world history in general.
Has that been going on for a long time? It feels like I've heard about that for a long time.
4 or 5 seasons now. Oh, it's epic, man. It starts in the 60s and goes all the way through the 90s, and it's just like a total divergence in the timeline. If you like stuff like, you know, Harry Turtledove or those kind of alternate world history books.
Man in the High Tower.
That one was. Yeah, like Man in the High Tower. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but sci-fi heavy.
Cool. Nice. I'll have to check that out.
You should.
So they go, speaking of checking things out, there we go. There's my segue. They are starting to explore around. Corey is complaining about always seeing his rocks and scrubby mountains. And Conlon, the colonel, tries to give the guy who's dying a little more water. And Corey's like, no more water. And they start to scuffle over it. And then Pearson's like, hey, guys, relax. He's dead. So you don't have to give him any more water. And Corey tries to take the dead guy's water. And Pearson's like, I swear I'll kill you if you even reach for it again. And Corey's like, I'll kill you if you try to do that. It's like, oh,
and they all have guns.
On. Yeah, right.
You know, you don't think about that usually when you think of astronauts. You don't think of them packing heat. But the Russians, they did in the beginning. Yeah. They gave them, I found this interesting thing about a 3-barreled gun called the TP-82.
Interesting.
It was like kind of similar to what the colonel's carrying in this, where it's got a stock on it as if it were a rifle, but it also looks like a handgun out front, and it has a barrel for it operating in, I think, as a pistol, a rifle, and then a flare. So there's three barrels, and the whole thing on the back, the stock that turns it into a rifle comes off, and it's a machete. So it's like a multi-tool. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was Soviet Union did that in case they had to hunt or protect themselves wherever they landed.
On the moon?
Yeah, like if they got to hunt moon critters.
Oh, pardon me. That's just my alarm. All right. So they are out and going around, and they come back, and they have to bury the third guy. So now it's just 3. And Conlon says that that they're going to go out after dark and take advantage of the coolness of the evening. So Donlin, sorry, is making camp, and Pearson and Corey leave, and it shows Donlin at camp, and Corey comes back alone, and he's playing it off like nothing happened, like just oh man, it's hot out there, and Conlin's like, where's Pearson? He's like, oh, I don't know. Like, we went different directions. And he's like, really, you went different directions? And then he notices Corey is drinking a whole bunch of water, which he didn't have a whole bunch of water before.
Right.
He's like, really? It's hot out there, huh? And he's like, yeah, you bet, mister.
Golly gee.
Yeah, very, very innocent. And Donlin's like, keep wanting to call him Conlon. Donlin's like, yeah, well, you got more water now than you left with. So where'd you get it from? Where's Pearson? So Corey is going through a whole iteration of lies to try and cover it up. But essentially, Donlin gets out his gun and is like, we're going to go get Pearson. So start walking. So they go walking. And my favorite part of the music cues, it sounds very reminiscent of Gustav Holst's The Planets Suite for orchestra.
I love that shit.
Mars Bringer of War. It's like, brr, 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 which I think that was in The Shining too, right?
Well, I think that was from Symphony Fantastique in The Shining. I think.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
I'm not sure, though. I think that was Berlioz, but I could be wrong.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different tune that's kind of that whole...
But it's got
you know what?
That kind of stomping down. Yeah, The Planet sounds more like a John Williams kind of music because, well, I think he, riffed on it a lot when he did Star Wars on purpose.
Oh, you know what? It is. I'm thinking of the other one that goes doon 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 doon. That was used in Venture Brothers episode that was just fantastic.
From the planets.
Yes, yeah. That's the one I was thinking of. That one. So you're right. It's what is it?
I think it's Symphony Fantastique. I think is that that piece of music that sounds similar to this.
Yeah,
we went down a rabbit hole there.
Deep digression. So he plays it off like nothing. They go walking, and they're walking, and they're walking, and they're walking, and it looks like you can see Corey is trying to figure out, okay, can I take a rock and try and knock Donlin out? And they kind of keep going, but Donlin's pretty careful to keep him ahead of him with his gun drawn. So they keep going, and finally they find Pearson, and he's lying on the ground, and Donlin runs over to him and drops his gun in the process. Is checking with Pearson. Pearson's barely alive, and he's like, what's going on? He draws like a symbol. He's trying to talk, but he can't talk, and he points up, and he's like, what's something above that ridge, and he tries to draw a symbol, and so he draws a symbol that looks kind of like a cross with two shorter horizontal lines on it. And you're like, what is the symbol? He's like, he drew a symbol or something. And you find out in a little bit, but I won't spoil it yet. But so he realizes that Pearson's inactively dying, gives him a little water, and meanwhile, Corey sees the gun is on the ground, goes, picks it up, and as Donlin starts going up the hill to cover the ridge, he shoots Donlin, and he has this line that's just like, ugh, I know people like this. He goes, and as the colonel is dying, he goes, I'm genuinely sorry, Colonel. I really am. But you brought the book to the wrong place. You brought the protocol, the chain of command, and the numbers, and none of them fit here. Yeah. So he reaches over.
So doesn't he say you brought morality to the wrong place at one point?
Oh yeah. So then he leans down to get the water from the colonel, and it turns out that he shot the canteen, and so all the water is gone. So a little poetic justice there. And he goes, Colonel, this is the jungle where only the tough animals survive, and they don't do it according to the rules. You know your trouble, Colonel? Yeah. You were looking for morality in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's like It's very much like those talking head bits in Survivor, the TV series Survivor.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the I'm not here to make friends. You know that morality it stops at the door of this is life or death, the contest. You know,
Right.
it is a measure of like what kind of person somebody is under those circumstances. They comes to the surface very quick.
There's a lot I encounter those people in society where they're like, you can tell they're like inches away from being able to enact their zombie apocalypse plan that they've got,
Yeah.
a stockpile of everything for. And it's just like, how are you in this world? How do you exist outside of that? Or are you just waiting? You're just,
Yeah.
I
I think
don't know, that's whole
it's
survivalist
something
mentality.
that it's a game they feel like they can win, but
Right.
it's not really being played. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're playing yourself. And I think that's where a lot of that is with that mentality is, yeah, I'm going to, do what I got to do to just coast by in society as it is. But in my mind, I'm number one and I'm just waiting cause I'm very special. I'm just waiting for the circumstance to arise where I come to my full potential.
Right.
And I think that's that kind of character, like this Pearson, not Pearson, Cody, Corey.
Corey. Yeah. Yeah.
Third time's a charm. That Corey is that kind of person. Like he was probably rotten all along.
Yeah.
Just nobody
Yeah.
knew. He hadn't been put to the test yet.
He hadn't been put to the test to see how he was going to respond in those circumstances. And it's creepy. I mean, it's kind of like, like I said, there's I feel like there's people like that. And it's what always throws me about it is they're so focused on that preparation that it kind of becomes a thing that you kind of want to bring about, because
Yeah.
then you get to put all your plans in place, and then you get to show how smart you were for thinking ahead and all that sort of, it's like, if you'd spent that much energy investing in what is existing right now, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it might be a different thing. It's all fear-based to me, and I don't know. I struggle with that, so.
I think of John Goodman's character in 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't seen that, but I know that character you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great character.
Totally. And then we have one of the few mid-episode voiceovers by Serling himself. And it's kind of interesting. He does this, he kind of derides Corey in this too. So he goes, now you make tracks, Mr. Corey. You move up and out, or up, out and up, like some kind of ghostly billy club was tapping at your ankles and telling you that it was later than you think. You scrabble up rock hills and feel the hot sand underneath your feet, and every now and then take a look over your shoulder at a giant sun suspended in a dead and motionless sky, like an unblinking eye that probes at the back of your head in a prolonged accusation. That was a very long sentence. Mr. Corey, last remaining member of a doomed crew. Keep moving. Make tracks, Mr. Corey. Push up and push out, because if you stop, maybe sanity will get you by the throat. Maybe realization will pry open your mind, and the horror you left down in the sand will seep in. Yeah, Mr. Corey, yeah. You better keep moving. That's the order of the moment. Keep moving. Which is like very like, I don't know, like poetic, but also it's weird. The fact that they put that in there was kind of just, pushing.
Yeah, don't you feel? I feel like that when they were probably editing the episode, they probably felt like something was missing and had them do it, because it is out of the ordinary for the series. They only did it like 3 other times, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can't imagine like what it would be like to edit an episode of Twilight Zone. It's got to be tricky.
Yeah. Well, and you want to balance all the different components of it, and so Corey gets up over the mountain, and you don't see from his perspective until he goes, Pearson. And he goes, oh, now I know what you meant. Now I know what you're trying to describe. And he does this weird reaction of like hysteria and crying and laughing.
And a pee-pee dance.
Yeah, right.
He does that too. From drinking all that water, I guess.
I guess. He goes, telephone poles. You were trying to draw telephone poles. and they pan over, and all of a sudden you see, boom, they're right by Reno, Nevada. And he goes, "We never left the Earth. That's why nobody tracked us. We never left the Earth. We just crashed back into it." He's crying, laughing, and
Are you an It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan?
I've never seen an episode.
It's very funny. There's an episode called "The Gang Broke D," where they convince the character D that she's this. They play this elaborate prank on her to convince her that she's a great stand-up comedian.
Oh no!
And part of it is they go up in a jet and fly around in circles she thinks that she's going to be on like the Tonight Show or something.
Oh no!
So they're just doing circles and then land back in Philadelphia and like take her into some fake show they set up. It's really funny, but they reminded me. This episode reminded me of that.
It's massive gaslighting.
Yeah.
And then he falls to his knees and says, "Donlin Pearson, what have I done? I'm sorry." That's the only piece that stood out to me as kind of disingenuous, because I didn't feel like that character would be sorry. I think he's just, regretting that he's done for now because he killed his compatriots.
He had a weird, he was compartmentalizing and, like it was okay to do this on an asteroid.
Right.
Yeah. Geographical morality, man. Weird.
And then the voiceover at the end is practical joke perpetrated by Mother Nature in a combination of improbable events. Practical joke wearing the trappings of a nightmare, of terror, of desperation. Small human drama played out in a desert 97 miles from Reno, Nevada, USA, continent of North America, the Earth, and, of course, the Twilight Zone.
Practical joke with saran wrap stretched over the top of the toilet that is the Twilight Zone.
And then I have to say, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. You.
Just at the end of the episode, Serling introduces the next episode, which I just want to jump into real quick here, because he goes, it's the hitchhiker. And he sticks his thumb out and he says a little bit about it, and he pulls it across the screen like he's hitchhiking. So he's kind of, giving the idea. But he's got a cigarette between his middle fingers, and it looks like he's flicking off this car as it's going by.
Yeah, we were laughing about that cigarette, like not even a moment. It's so rare for him not to have one.
And there's a PSA right after it that says, "When temper takes the wheel, you can't handle the unexpected. Drive safely." And it's like a road rage prevention ad PSA in 1960. So I thought that was kind of funny too.
Where are you streaming this episode from?
These are episodes from the Blu-rays.
The Blu-rays? Because I don't think I think the version I watched may not have had the PSA.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember seeing it. It's interesting.
It's funny stuff.
So this episode, I shot an arrow into the air. 9 years later, Bernie Wrightson and Mary Wolfman would adapt it for. There was a Web of Horror, was a comic. I can't remember if I can't remember who published it, but it's kind of like an EC Tales from the Crypt type of comic. And they did a 7-page story called Breathless, which was based on this same idea. The difference is that the astronauts were afraid to take their suits off. So they suffocated in their suits on Earth. Yeah.
That's wild.
I feel like that was a good twist to the story, like the little change.
Right. All the unknowns become so magnified when they're unknowns.
Yeah. Water everywhere, not a drop to drink kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was cool. Yeah. The next week, that is one of my favorites, the Hitchhiker that's coming up. It's for me as a kid, I thought it was incredibly scary.
Yeah. Very cool. There's a bunch of these episodes I have to catch up when I see them. It's like, it's I don't know. It's rediscovering all of this. I'm just having a blast doing this. So
it's a good time.
Appreciate
we're not even done with the first season yet. There's a lot of episodes, but we'll be back in 1 week. And thank you for listening. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.